friends, tonight I'm bringing you another viewer request video. Thank you everybody who's been commenting and liking and sharing and subscribing and just being in my little YouTube universe. Thank you guys so much. This video will be building a tank setup. And I'm not sure who requested that, and I'm sorry. If you know who you are, please comment so I can give you a little shout out in the next video. As I have described before, there's basically two main types of tarantulas. Terrestrial, which would be ground dwelling, which needs a shorter, wider enclosure. And terrestrial, which would need a taller, narrower enclosure. And I have basically 3 uniform sizes of each one that I use. For our boreal, this would be a small, medium, large, and for those who need it, some never do, extra large. This would be like your bigger Poecilotheria, things like that. For my terrestrial, this is a small, medium, large. And if you've ever seen like my bird eating videos, I have something that's almost this long and about twice this wide, so that'd be an extra large for a terrestrial species. We'll be just building one of these and rehousing one animal so you can see how I build it. The tools that I will be using are the old enclosure, a hide, which is made out of the same deli container, a medium-sized enclosure, vermiculi I always use, and tongs. I use a soldering gun to make the holes, and since this is a recycled one, it already has the holes, but as I have explained before, I like to use a hot soldering gun. Obviously it's not plugged in right now, because what that does is that burns the plastic, and you want to use it in a ventilated area because it does smoke and you probably don't want to breathe that stuff in. But what that does is it takes away any sharp edges that you would have if you were to use a sharp tool to make holes. In my really tiny containers, what I actually use are needles, and the holes are so small you can barely even see them. But if you have a tiny animal, you don't want it to be getting out. You only want it to be able to breathe and have ventilation. Obviously, do not walk away and leave the soldering iron plugged in. It's very hot, it can cause a fire, and of course don't do this with the animal inside. Make the holes before you put the animal in. That's just common sense. It's something that you don't want to forget. Now I like to make the substrate a little heavier in the beginning because it tends to be removed over time when I pick up bolus, and you need to make sure the vermiculite is fairly damp because it will absorb the moisture. I'm adding a little more vermiculite to make this a little more naturalistic. I know many of you have concerns because you rarely see hides or water dishes, but as I have explained to many of those concerned viewers, I often remove those things before filming. Can see the animal. Believe me, none of my animals are abused or neglected. You want to make sure that the vermiculite is damp enough that it kind of sticks together, but not so damp that water will run out. If it does, that means it's too wet, which I use that as a test, and it looks good. This is one of my baby munchkin patches. Now this is a tiny little species. I know it seems small, they don't get real big. What I'm going to do is just leave the container in there. It will come out whenever it is ready, and then I will remove the old container. That was rehousing or DIY building a tarantula tank. Hope you guys enjoyed. It's really easy. You can definitely add decoration. However, as I have also explained to viewers who are concerned that my containers are too plain or that my animals are, you know, depressed because they're in such a boring habitat, here's what I have found over time. People like pretty enclosures. I do. I like pretty things. However, the more stuff that's in there, the more things that you have to harbor bacteria and mold and things like that. What I have found is if you have a clean utilitarian enclosure without all that naturalistic stuff, the animals tend to stay healthier and happy and live a full long lifespan rather than battling mold and crypt flies and bacterial infections and things like that. Taking care of hundreds and hundreds of animals every week, that's what I have found to be best for the animals, even though I prefer pretty stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I'll see you next time.